Hello YouTube and welcome to the pre-season PRs for FLI or Fun League Invitational. I am your host, Vanilla Snorlax the man, and my mic keeps falling off the stand. Today we are going to be going over at least this top row of teams. I'm going to try to do it all in one sitting, but that's going to take a while and I have some stuff to do. So at least for this video, part 1, I'll be doing this top 6. How many is this? Top 8. The top 8. Oh my gosh. Please no. These top 8 at least. I'm gonna try to get both videos out today if I can, but for sure this one sitting I'm gonna try to do these top 8. We'll see how it goes. It is right now 9:44 a.m. in Hawaii, and we're gonna just jump right into this. So number 1 team, we're just gonna go left to right. So if you want to skip ahead and you don't care about anyone else's team and you just want to hear your own or the end ranking, I'll timestamp the end ranking and then I will timestamp in the I'll just have it in the pinned comment and then left to right. So if you're the 4th team here, just skip ahead a little bit and you'll see your team, and I'll talk about it. So first up we have Ryan here, my boy, the fill-in Elite 4, who's actually doing really well. I think he should just take Elite 4, but whatever. It looks like I'm just gonna go straight into the team recap. He actually made playoffs. I'm not gonna go straight to the team recap. I lied. He made playoffs for SPDL season 3. He lost in the, I think it was quarterfinals to Knocked. I forget what he lost to, but I think it was a good game. It was a good game. Yeah, I couldn't see that day because I had my eyes dilated, so I couldn't see screens. But going over his team, the first impression I have here is it looks like a hyper offense team that didn't intend to be hyper offense, so it's not built 100% correctly. For instance, I don't really see a screen setter, a reliable one. Smeargle is a screen setter, but it's a Smeargle. Smeargle has a pretty low base speed and can get kind of taunted with anything faster than it. He has double shell smash, 1, 2, 3 swords dance, 4 swords dance, bulk up, calm mind. So he has a lot of setup on this team. And he only has 1 screen setter. Screen setter isn't necessary on hyper offense, but in draft league it's kind of necessary on draft league if you were to take off one of these attackers that aren't doing as much. Say Blastoise for a reliable screen setter. I know Coco's a screen setter, but a lot of times you don't want to waste Coco because it can be a defogger, a screen setter, a setup mon, a banded specs. It can do so many different things that having it locked into the screen setter role isn't good. You also have every form of removal. You have like 100 different types of removal, so it's not really a big deal. Looking at the draft board, I'm pretty sure that Alolan Ninetales was taken. Grimmsnarl was taken, so maybe there weren't any good screen setters by the time you got around to that, which is really unfortunate, but I'm sure there's something here that can set screens a little more reliably, or not. Maybe that's why you took it. You're forced kind of into taking that, which is sad. Possibly making a trade. You are able to make trades. Bronzong is a good screen setter. That's sad. If you're a lower tier, actually, if you're a man, you can just go ahead and draft Vulpix. Go ahead and do that. A lot of new ice types got access to Hail, or all the new mons that have the ability that makes Hail. What's it called? Snow Warning, and got the ice thing, the Aurora Veil. But I'm sure you can break a trade with somebody maybe, or just find a good screen setter for yourself. Frostas is a good one. Yeah. But yeah, that screen setter is an issue. Another thing I'm noticing, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, you're pretty ground weak. You have 1 resistance, 1 immunity, which is alright. But it's definitely not ideal, especially if you're gonna be that ground weak, because that just means all they gotta do is remove your Landorus and or hit pressure muck with coverage like knockoff. Since say like Terrakion with not Terrakion, or yeah, it's interacting with like Mega Horn, something that can get rid of this Dhelmise pretty easily, and then your team is really weak to the ground. You're not too knockoff weak. The double ghost is annoying, but it's not horrible. You have the dark type. Alolan Muck is so good. It's really slept on. I don't like the amount of setup you have, mainly because it's gonna force either Coco, Landorus. It's gonna force one of these. It's not gonna force them, but it's gonna favor them being banded or having some sort of immediate power or momentum. For instance, if you're running U-turn, you're never gonna be running setup, at least most of the time. Scissor's an exception, I guess. But you're not gonna be running bulk up U-turn Coco because you're gonna be wasting your stat boosts. And part of the reason you're gonna need pivoting, you're gonna need pivoting because of it's a hyper offense team. It's an offensively based team that's not put together poorly, but it has a hard time moving around. I can see that already. Oh, and the setup. Yeah, the setup. The reason is the setup. Because everything's so setup biased, it's gonna be mons that can operate without setup, forced into roles that will give it immediate power and help with things that will set up. So for instance, Blastoise as a Specs mon won't always be as good as if you can get a Shell Smash off, right? So you're going to be running Screens, Coco, and Banded Dhelmise maybe to break something or set up Coco, and that means if I'm worried about this Blastoise, say Blastoise is good against my team, but you need to set up, I need to take care of Coco, I need to take care of Dhelmise or Hitmonlee or something. This Hitmonlee Coco Core is good too. It's a good late game sweeper. Hitmonlee is good for 9 points, so you can do a lot of things. Assault Vest, Rapid Spin. Your speed tiers look okay. I'm pretty sure you go from Coco to Mega Gallade unless Hitmonlee is faster than I remember it. Let me pull up Showdown really fast here. Yeah, Mega Gallade is at 110, so I'm pretty sure you go from 130 to 110. Landorus, Incarnate, yeah, 101. And Hitmonlee is not faster than I remember. It is 85. So your team is has that gap there, which isn't a huge deal, but that'll let things that are faster get away with running a boosting nature. And while there might not seem to be a lot of things faster, a lot of prominent dead threats against hyper offense, especially if they have the jump, such as Dragapult, stuff that I guess didn't matter as much, like Bulu and Rillaboom now are massive issue with their priority. Noivern, something like Noivern. I know I'm calling out specific mons, but that's just how it's gonna be. Lopunny. So it's an alright team. I just don't like exactly how it's comprised as an offensively based team. It feels like there's a lacking not even backbone. It feels like there's a lacking mode that can help set up the team correctly, especially when you're running so much setup mons. Hitmonlee requires a lot of setup. Dhelmise doesn't require setup as much, but defensively it has a little bit of a harder time. It's kind of better on Trick Room, I think, for its versatility on Trick Room. Sandslash requires setup if you're not using it defensively. Even defensively, it has not a lot of reliable recovery. I think it has rest. Blastoise is a good setup. Dual Blade is good defensively, but that thing has a hard time with knockoff, and if your defensive backbone is going to be Dual Blade, Sandslash, Dhelmise, and Muck, all of those are really hating knockoff because Muck will lose its Assault Vest, Dhelmise will lose its leftovers and take a lot of damage. Sandslash will take a lot of damage and lose its leftovers. Dual Blade will lose it to Violite. So those are all a big issue. Speargle as a screen setter is a bad screen setter, or not bad, but I don't like it. It can screen set into teleport or baton pass or whatever you want, but not great. Another thing is these mons, these setup ones down here, such as at least Dhelmise, Blastoise, Dual Blade, Turtonator, because Dual Blade can Swords Dance, Shadow Sneak type of thing. Those all get shut down by taunt relatively easily by faster taunters. Blastoise only has like a base 75, 80 speed. So anything above that, faster taunters are pretty popular. Something like Obstagoon and Gliscor, even something like Landorus or all of that, Bishop, those are all fast taunters that will give you an issue. But yeah, I'm not sure how I'm gonna rank stuff. Alright. The most professional ways. So, as of right now, what is your team name? I'm not a bad friend of pros. Oh, I'm not even gonna try. Oh, I'm so good. Number 1, Orlando Stars. You're single-handedly the best team in the league as of right now. Next is Yokayuk. I like the double monkey. You sniped me for Infernape, so thank you. Actually, I would have been stuck with that. Did you drop your Mega for Aerodactyl? You did. Alright. Let's go over this team. So number 1, thirsting off the bat, I see that you picked up the... I think you picked up the Aerodactyl mainly because it closed the speed tier gap. Mega Aerodactyl is like 1,000,000 speed. 150 speed, and then your next jump would have been Infernape at 108. And that's a really bad speed tier gap. Now you're dealing with 30 to 108, which is a similar issue with Coco Gallade. Same issues. If you watch that, then basically let faster mons take advantage of an adamant or modest speed and nature. Oh, by the way, Ryan, I'm not trying to diss anyone's teams, by the way. It's okay. You guys are experimenting, using new things, all types of stuff. But yeah, your team. I like your team. The speed control is kind of mitigated by Rillaboom. I can see that for sure. Your team isn't overwhelmingly reliant on grassy terrain, which is something that I think Rillaboom teams need to take note of. Since you're not dealing with the amount of bulk that top of Bulu has, and the typing, Rillaboom needs to not be under as much defensive pressure to keep the team healthy. Obviously, Infernape, Nidoqueen, and Steelix all take advantage of the terrain, but it's not like every mon on your team likes or needs the terrain to not succeed but do well with. 1, 2, 3. I like the Clefable pick. The Steels, Infernape and Clefable pair really nicely in my opinion because they take care of each other's major issues, especially with coverage. For instance, poison and fire types are poison and steels. Infernape takes care of easily with ground coverage, earthquake, and obviously the fire coverage it gets. Ape is one of the best mons in Draft League in my opinion. My favorite to use in Draft League because of its options. It can go Bandit, Spec, Scarf, Nasty Plot, Swords Dance, Bulk Up, Calm Mind, everything. I think you got Scorching Sands Regeneration, which is really cool. It will help a lot with a lot of things, which will make special sets even better to break through defensive mons like Clefable can have a hard time 1v1ing. Obstagoon is an excellent breaker. Obstagoon is a hit or miss mon in my opinion. It either does really well or it's kind of dead weight. But I feel like for the most part it's doing well. Another thing I'm noticing. Actually, no, I was gonna say your knockoff week. We have 2 months week to knock off. I'm not seeing too many major weaknesses, except there's a minor ice weakness. Ice Spam is our freeze dry and ice weakness. Rillaboom, Nidoqueen, Jellicent, Sigilif, Steelix kind of. I'm pretty sure Steelix grounds, yeah, they don't go neutral, but I'm pretty sure Steelix's special bulk is bad. Yeah, 65, so that's not going to be wanting to take Ice Beams or Blizzards all that much. Aerodactyl also doesn't resist. Charjabug is disgustingly bulky for a young mon, and Munchbox is my mascot, so I can't say anything bad about it. You're missing a Dragon, which isn't completely necessary. Cores are good, but it's more about synergy over cores, in my personal humble opinion. I don't like the speed tier gap at all, honestly, but I would definitely not count this team out. I'm not 100% sure on all your speed tiers, but I think there's a couple gaps here and there. I need to do some research and look at it a little bit more. Another thing I do like though, actually, I was gonna say I like your pivoting, but you only have 4 options to move around, which isn't horrible. Rillaboom, Infernape, Clef, and Charjabug, which isn't all that bad. But because Rillaboom and Infernape aren't particularly fast compared to the majority of the metagame, I can see Ape getting locked into more of a Scarfed role, or a Rillaboom needing to be preserved really aggressively to keep terrain and Grassy Glide up. Stuff like Coco, I can see this team having a hard time against. Your team actually does really well since there's no HP, I think. A lot of teams actually do well with no HP. What could you do to make this team better? I would check out the speed tiers, try to fill this gap between Aerodactyl and Infernape. I'm pretty sure you only have 1, 2, 3, you have 4 rockers, which is fine, which is good actually. I like 4 rockers. Honestly, it looks like Clef and Obstagoon are the most expendable members. Another thing is your walls that you have here don't really have their own recovery, which means they're going to be leaning on Clef a lot, which can make Clef a predictable bring since you're going to need to keep Nidoqueen and Steelix and Charjabug to an extent healthy throughout the game. Munchlax is Munchlax, losing its Violet. Munchlax and Charjabug both losing their Violet is huge, which is another thing. This defensive core with Munchlax, Charjabug, Jellicent are all pretty knockoff weak. I know that maybe Bug and Munchlax won't be coming too much, but that's part of my point. Then at that point you have 9 Mons to work with, and if your walls are going to be leaning on Clefable, I can see Clefable coming every week. I can see Rillaboom and Ape coming every week. I can see one of these walls coming every week. With Sigilyph as kind of like this in between. So your team looks a little bit predictable, but I'm not 100% sure how it's going to play out. Really depends how you're going to use it. But yeah, this is a good team compared to Ryan's team. Even though yours is a bit more predictable, Yuck, I like how yours handles the majority of more situations. Ryan's gonna hurt against faster Taunters and Haze, along with just good defensive counterplay. I don't know, this is a close one. I'm gonna give Yook's team, for now at least, the slight advantage. Mainly because he does have the options for priority. He could put on the gas and bring a bunch of offensive threats. Sheer Force Nidoqueen is excellent in its own right. Aerodactyl, I think if you still had, you might have gotten rid of that dragon to fix your ice weakness, which is really cool. I don't know, this is a really close one. I think it's going to come down to preference. They both have a similar, not similar weakness, but they both have the same amount of weaknesses, I think. But I'm going to give it to you, Yook, right now. Next is Kate's team. Kate performed, first time I saw Kate ever perform was in LCD's first ever event, which had its 1-year anniversary pretty recently, actually, about a few days ago. Which was the first time me and Orange ever worked on something together, and that LCD got its start. I saw you drafted Stall that time too, but that Stall has something different that this Stall doesn't, which is offensive pressure. I'm pretty sure your Stall last time had something around the lines of, like, you had the Gliscor, Ferrothorn, whatever, but you also had what was that? It was Mega Lopunny. You had Mega Lopunny. So the way Stall works in draft is usually you got your Stall Mons and you got one fast powerful Mon like a Zeraora or a Lopunny or a Dragapult that can keep your opponent offensively, that can keep your opponent respectful. Something that can make your opponent respect that Mon. Dragapult, even if that's your only offensive Mon, your opponent's going to have to respect it. Because of just how good it is. This team doesn't have that exactly. Your fastest Mon is going to be Whimsicott at 116 or 130, but Whimsicott offensively can only run Specs, and Fairy Grass is good. But I see this Mon maybe going into a Prankster role more often, perhaps to set up the Como-O. People are going to have to respect this Como-O, but it's not the same immediate respect that Dragapult will demand, because Dragapult is so much faster than Como-O. Your typings seem to be pretty well. There's not a lot of consistent typings. It's just stall. It's well built stall. It's just missing that offensive presence that gives you immediate speed, immediate power, and all of that. If I were to say anything, I know you succeeded with stall, but it's really not about how you succeeded. It's about right now. And I know you can make this team work. You could probably still win with this team. But I'm trying to do this without player skill involved. Shelmet and Porygon I don't like together because of their knockoff weakness. This team specifically has an issue with knockoff. They're going to be leaning on Autono a lot to keep stuff like Ferrothorn healthy if they can't leech seed off correctly. Arcanine has Morning Sun, so it's not a big deal. Shelmet has Recover and Spikes, which is awesome. But Shelmet and Porygon together I'm not a big fan of. Especially because you're a little fighting weak with Porygon, Autono, and Ferrothorn. I know Bro and Gliscor are both okay, but you don't really want to be switching into knockoffs, especially with Gliscor, before you get your Toxic Orb off. Gliscor is actually the only thing that you can make your opponent respect your offensive presence if you get a Swords Dance up. Coma O2, but usually that's belly drumming. But it has to sub and belly drum, which is 2 turns, which isn't bad, but if your opponent switches in something that can haze on the sub, then you kind of just get stalled out. Something that I think you could look into trades would be Ditto. I don't really see why you need this Silvally too much. I understand it's a good pivot with the U-turn and Parting Shot, but I think Ditto serves your team a lot better, which means because your opponent won't be able to just set up and start breaking you. They can't just sub up with their Dragapult and start clicking the button because you have Ditto. Or not sub up, but they can't just start setting up. They can't double dance Landorus to break through your team because they have to respect the Ditto, which makes it a lot easier for you to wall install. The only toxic immunity you have would be the Gliscor and Ferrothorn, or the Shelmet too. But yeah, it's stall without the immediate offensive presence. It's a good team, but I don't like how it handles the majority of situations compared to the other two, so I'm gonna put them below here. Orange said everything I said, just a little bit more harsh. I forget what he said. What did he say? Did he not talk about your team? Huh. Oh, I guess he didn't talk about your team. Oh well. Oh no, he did. Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, has a hard time dealing with setup. Very slow team. Easy to abuse with taunt, which is rough. Part of the issue with stall is that because you know stall is coming, you can slap taunt on a few things. Sub taunt really hurts this team. Whimsicott is Whimsicott, but against a dark type, you won't be able to status or anything, which most dark types are the ones that are taunting. But yeah, I'm gonna put that as third for now. The Widgedoor Watchhogs are going to be... I like this team a lot, actually. I don't like... Okay, actually, hold on. Let me think this. You're really top heavy, and I don't see as much value in your bottom tiers like Illumise, like a Tongue, Shelgon. Here's why. From the looks of it, these top 5 or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, these top 6, these top 7, yeah. These top 7 are great. You have the mobility and the defensive capabilities with Rachi being able to pretty much run every set. Kyurem on the special side, Lopunny on the physical side, Zeraora is mixed, and then Amogus and Mantine on the defensive front. Landorus T to support and give you more pivoting. And then after that, you have Slacking, Shelgon, Lickitung, Illumise. Illumise I see coming very rarely, if ever. Heavy Duty Boost is cool. Prankster is cool. You can run Prankster Defog, I guess, as utility, but I don't see that coming as much as, you know, you might slap on this Landorus for the Intimidate. Ligatung can wish pass, but I honestly don't see that coming too much. Since you have 1, 2, 3 normal types, and I don't see all of them coming at once. Slacking is cool. Slacking is the only mon other than Landorus that I can see being viable with Scarf Retaliate or something, or even just Band's Explosion to just trade, which can be huge for this team. Issue is I see it being a little bit predictable, because you're gonna need rocks. You don't need rocks, but you know, it's rocks, it's good. And you have 1, 2 rockers, which means Landorus or Rachi will be coming. You have Lickitung. I'm pretty sure Lickitung gets rocks. No, it doesn't get rocks. Yeah, so you'll be sending rocks with Landorus or Rachi. Those are your only 2 forms of hazards, I believe. Yeah. Shogun, Lickitung hate knockoff, so you're not going to be wanting to bring those, and if you do, they won't be as reliable. Lickitung actually isn't as necessary on this team because of the team's walls that you do have are able to rely on their own recovery, except for Landorus. That won't be able to rely on its recovery, but Mantine has Roost, Amoonguss is Amoonguss, and Rachi is actually a very good wish passer, so I don't really see the need for Lickitung on the team. I can see Shogun is here, I think, just for the budget. But I don't like Double the Violet on any team. Slacking, big strong. I can just see a lot. I can see a variation of these 7 or 8 mons coming every week without needing to prep for Shogun, Lickitung, and Illumise. Is that a big deal? I consider it a big deal because if you're not getting utility out of these 3 bottom picks, these top 4 or 6 or 7 or 8 or whatever it is are going to be carrying the majority of prep, and prep is 50% of the battle in Draft League. Another thing is, while fighting isn't fighting is actually not that big of an issue, but if you're fighting against something that has the elemental punches and a fighting move, they can just scarf it and then have kind of just play a tit for tat type of situation with Ice Punch, Thunder Punch, and just fighting move. Zero Aura is an excellent mon. Your speed tiers actually look to be pretty good with Zero Aura, Lopunny, and Jirachi, and then Lando T and your 2 walls. But in between your 2 walls and the Lando T, there's a gap there, and it won't be filled by the Slacking and these 3 down here. I'm pretty sure Slacking is base 100. Yeah, base 100. So yeah. That's what I think about this team. It looks pretty predictable. It looks good though. I mean, the predictability isn't always a bad thing. Your 2 walls are pretty passive, but that's okay. I mean, I don't like it when people diss walls for being passive because, you know, they're walls. I like the mobility you have. I like Kyurem as a breaker for Zera Aura, and Lando and Lopunny to clean after the game. I like Lopunny as a breaker, as a setup sweeper. I like all these as setup sweepers. But yeah, this Slacking, Shogun, Lickitung, and Illumise are holding it back. If you could consider maybe dropping the Lando for getting a couple more value mons, that would be cool. Stuff that works with the team, maybe a little bit more defensive reliability, without getting too passive. I'd say maybe a wall, something that can go all ways. Your team doesn't look too weak to Psychic or Dark, so Hoopa Unbound is a great mon that can kind of do everything. Or not Hoopa Unbound, I'm sorry, regular baby Hoopa. But yeah, I really like your team. I'm gonna put it, it has the same issue Yoke does with these bottom 2 mons, or a few of them not always looking like they'll ever show up. I'm gonna give you the first place spot right now, just because I feel like it has the same issues that Yooks does, but you do the job better with what you got. Mexico Mimikyu. This is Fat Rat. Yes. So, I like this team. Dragapult plus Mandibuzz is pretty popular in Draft League. It has been since Mandibuzz and Dragapult since Dragon Ball kind of came out. Paired with Buzz is amazing. Mega Gardevoir is kind of a lackluster Mega in my opinion. That base 100 speed tier is kind of really annoying since it lacks a little bit of a breaker. Not that much as a breaker, obviously. I'm pretty sure it's like 160 something special attack, which is crazy. 163 special attack. Is bending over to any type of bullet punch or anything, but that 100 base speed tier is annoying because you're liable to get revenge shield. You can't scarf it. Most teams will be carrying something that's faster than that, so switching into that and then getting forced out is going to be tough to deal with. But if you can play to its strength and if you can get away with modest natures, which you pretty much can since you have the coverage above with Dragapult, is great. Typhlosion, what speed? 100. Okay. I don't like that you have crowded speed tiers. You have Mega Guard and Lucario with both base 100. No, Mega Guard and Typhlosion with both base 100. And your speed tier gap goes from Dragapants to Gardevoir, which is a 73-point speed gap, which is a lot worse than the others. As we mentioned with, I believe it was, who did we talk about speed tier gaps with? These two, Yook and Ryan. Their speed tier gaps is an issue, but this is a really bad one because from 43 to 100, 143 to 100 is a really big deal because that allows for more mons to take advantage of an adamant speed nature, like a Weavile, for example. Adamant nature, adamant Weavile will be breaking through the vast majority of your team. Pyukumuku is getting knocked off and substituted on. That mon is just set up fodder for days. Understand you have Unaware with Pyukumuku, but Toxic Stall, you can't Toxic back with, you know, whatever it is. I'm going to pause after this one really fast. Let me get through this. As for a rocker, you have two. I like Blissey as a rocker, but seeing it being locked into a rocker roll if you want to run offensive Nidoking is going to be annoying, especially because if you fire off an attack with Nidoking and they calc that and say, hey man, that's a Life Orb, Sheer Force, Nidoking, then they know, okay, well the Blissey is most likely rocks, which means that the other three attacks are probably healing move, either Soft Boiled or Wish, Seismic Toss, and then move of choice, right? Which means Blissey's predictable. Another thing is your walls again. Actually, your walls don't really rely on Blissey, which is nice. I can see this is a good example of using your low tiers or your cheaper mons with good value. Shuckle, Pyukumuku, Typhlosion, and Frost all bring something to the table. Typhlosion brings power and speed and a good specs user. Pyukumuku brings a good Unaware wall. Shuckle brings webs. Frost brings momentum, which is really cool. I really like this team actually. The only really issue I'm seeing, that's really a problem for me, is that massive speed tier gap. If you can find a way to fix that speed tier gap, that's awesome. I think stuff like, I don't know, let's look at what's in this speed tier. Something like Salazzle, Whimsicott, Starmie, Rabombi, Talonflame, Jolteon, something between those two, preferably around 120 would fix the speed tier gap. Because the reason you want to be able to force Jolly or boosting speed natures is because you don't want your opponent to take advantage of Modest or Adamant, because that puts more unnecessary pressure on your walls because your offensive mons aren't doing their job, at least in the speed tier and prep game. Your team doesn't look too passive. Blissey's is insanely passive. Pyukumuku is insanely passive. Pyukumuku is the only thing that doesn't have momentum, can't teleport. But Pyukumuku can sit on things for a very long time with Unaware, and Blissey can teleport out. So yeah, that's that. The team leans a little bit more. The team actually leans a lot on the special attacking side, so I can see Lucario and maybe Dragapult being forced into a physically offensive role a lot of the time. But other than that, really good team. I'm gonna put your team as the top one as of right now. And I'm going to pause really fast. And we are back from your commercial break, and there was no commercial. Isn't that crazy? We have gone through what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 teams. So right now for this video we have 3 more. I'm getting DM'd. Oh, that's okay. I'm gonna ignore it. I'm sorry. Sorry, Keenan DM'd me. But coincidentally, Keenan, we're going over your team. Um, so this team is another team that's very top heavy. Victini, Sylveon, Latias, Mega Venusaur, Bishop, all great mons. Quagsire, Alolan Sandslash, Vanillix, Bolton, Floatzel, Girder, not as great. He has good value, technically, these down here. I mentioned this in the main chat room. Someone was saying his team looks wrong, and I said that's because of this detached core here, which is a detached core. I'm not sure what it's technically called. I just call it a detached core. Hold up, pause again. And we're back. Alright, well, anyway, we were talking about this detached core right here with Alolan Sandslash and Vanillix. The reason I call it a detached core is because it's removed separately a bit from the rest of the team. So, for instance, Mega Venusaur's number one reliable way of recovery is Synthesis. Synthesis heals 50%, I believe, 50% in a neutral weather, which means there's no weather active. In the sun, it'll heal like 75%. In the hail or the sand, it heals 25%. So if you're gonna be pivoting off into, say, your Sandslash, you got 2 turns of hail left. You get out into Mega Venusaur. You're forced out into Mega Venusaur because of the Scarf Fast Firemon or whatever. You're forced into Mega Venusaur. Mega Venusaur already had 60% chip. You took another 25, and instead of being able to heal 50, you're not gonna be able to out heal 2 attacks of the fire move because hail will end and the opponent is faster than you. That's a huge deal, especially when it comes to breaking down walls. This means every time Mega Venusaur is in, you're gonna have to be spamming Synthesis to make sure you're healthy enough to switch in case hail is up, if you bring hail. That's your main issue with this team. Another thing is Bolton is bad. Bolton is just a bad mon. It's a good mon. I actually like Bolton. It's good in theory. It's better than Jolteon in theory. In practice, compared to how much it's valued at, it's never as good as Jolteon or anything else. But Jolteon got sniped, so I know why you went for it. Also, something interesting that I actually like this generation with Flip Turn. I think it has like 1 base 16 attack with good priority Aqua Jet, Flip Turn, and just good stab and coverage overall. Your team is pretty knockoff weak. Not pretty knockoff weak, but nothing on your team really likes taking a knockoff too much. A lot of times Quagsire is needing his leftovers to switch in and take 2 attacks from an attacker that Venusaur can't handle if they have good coverage for it. Girder is something really interesting that does not like losing its leftovers at all. Offensively, your team leans very strongly to a physical team with Floatzel, Bolton, Sandslash, Bisharp, and Victini. But Victini can go both ways on the special side, just without setup. Spec Shearing Shot is always an option. Sylveon is possible to run offensively and is good offensively, but I can see it being locked more into a defensive situation because of the rest of the team. Vanillix is a great late game sweeper, with being able just to spam Blizzard after the team has been worn down. Steinslash is also good. Vanillix has access to Aurora Veil now, so setting up a Bisharp is good. Your Rock Setter is... I don't see a Rock Setter on this team. So you don't have a Rock Setter, you don't have any... well, you have Bisharp, but Bisharp's not a real Rock Setter, okay? You don't want to be wasting a move with Bisharp. You're usually needing your coverage in Swords Dance or your substitute in Swords Dance or whatever. You need all 4 moves. It already has 4 move syndrome, and it doesn't need to also worry about rocks. So that's an issue. The reason that's an issue is because your team and the opponent's team are going to be taking a lot of chip from hail. So racking out that extra chip for Scarf, Victini, or even Sandslash in the hail to clean at the end of the game is going to be really important. Bisharp can pick things up in Wall Break as well as Victini. I can see this team primarily leaning on Victini as a breaker, using Alolan Sandslash and Vanillix to clean up at the end game, and really ignoring Venusaur as anything more than just a wall to take temporarily take hits until you can get an offensive mon in. Which is another thing. I can see that because Mega Venusaur is not going to be recovering as much off hail. Vanillix is going to need to maybe play an Aurora Veil role more if Venusaur is going to be switching into hail. So yeah, there's that. Your team doesn't like knockoff. I said that already. but it's still a good team. Like, these top 5 mons, top 6 mons are great. I can just see how this can be a problem, especially compared with removal. You have 1 form of removal, 2 forms of removal, but how much do you really want to run Rapid Spin, Load, and Sand Slash? You're wasting hail at that point. So Latios can be locked into defog more, which can really hurt you against hazard stacking. Bisharp pairs well with hazard stacking, so because you can't hazard stack anymore, it's going to be an issue. So the team, I think the theme of this team is that it does stuff, but it doesn't complete the job it's meant to do. You can't hazard stack because you're missing the hazards. You can't, you can't wall because you have hail in the way of Mega Venusaur, and you can't sweep always because you need to set up the hail, and then Latios is usually defog, so it can't be Scarf to pick things off late game. Bolton is not as great as a pivot. Your pivots in general are pretty bad. You have 1, 2, 3 pivots, which is alright, but it's not great, especially if you're not going to be bringing Bolton as much. But overall, it's a good team. It's an alright team. I know you're meant to experiment with mons that you wanted to try out. So you did a good job with that, I think, for sure. And you can definitely win with this team. It's just going to be a little difficult working around the weaknesses it has. I am going to put this team... See, it has a similar issue as Ryan's does, in that it doesn't complete the job it's meant to do as well. But I like how your team handles the majority of more situations, I think. I'm not sure. I'm gonna put you under Ryan for now, but I could change that opinion depending on how things work out. Oh, you guys aren't able to see this team over here. Well, I'll see how I can fix that later. Actually, I'll fix it now. I'm pausing. Okay, that should fix that. You can see those 2 last teams a little better. So Nox team, I don't really have to go over this one too much. Orange did a lot. Actually, I can go over this a little bit more. So your team is, what do I talk about first? Alright, let's talk about your speed. Let's talk about your speed first. So your fastest mon on this team is Cinderace. Cinderace hits 1. Actually, it might be Manectric. No, Manectric is slow. Yeah, 105. That's nothing. Cinderace is your fastest mon at 119. 119 isn't horrible to cap your speed at, but it's definitely not good. It's definitely not good at all. Cinderace gives you option with removal, but that'll lock it into boots as much because you only have 2 forms of removal on your team. I don't think Delibird has defog. Oh no, it does have defog, but that'll lock you into boots, and I don't really see Delibird ever coming. Yeah, I really don't see Delibird coming that often, to be honest with you. So I don't really count that as really good removal. Defensively, your team doesn't really have a defensive backbone, in that Celebi, Araquanid, and Aggron kind of make up the defensive backbone with Scizor, Primarina, with Scizor and Primarina. Yeah, Scizor and Primarina are able to go either way, really. If you wanted to run like Assault Vested Prim with Flip Turn, or you wanted to run just a bulky Prim in general. Scizor gets its own recovery, and Scizor also gets defog. The main issue I have with this team is it forces a lot of rolls on your bonds. So for instance, for a rocker, you're going to need to be running Celebi. Aggron is a rocker, but it's a bad rocker. That mon gets bent over and spanked by any type of fighting move. That thing would die from Wake Up Slap from a Delibird. It's just a bad mon. It's also very slow. You're gonna, a lot of times you need to be run like Sash lead just to get rocks up, and at that point you just have a dead mon. I don't see Delibird or Aggron coming as often. You're not gonna find a lot of options for it, I think. One thing your team does have is a lot of good pivoting. I think Celebi, Manectric, Zoroark, Prim, Scizor, and Cinderace all have great pivoting. But this is why forcing rolls is an issue, because I can see Cinderace being locked into boots a lot because it has to run court change, and Cinderace isn't the most reliable form of removal, because that means if you get rocks up, you're also going to just be putting rocks on your side of the field again. And it's incredibly frail, which means you're not going to be able to, I don't know, court change on a Toxapex, because the Toxapex is going to scald you and do 50% to you. And losing chip or getting chipped down on your offensive line, so it might not seem like a big deal. It can be huge in the late game. Zygarde is an excellent mon, excellent tier 1. I don't think it's, obviously you're thrown into the mix since you picked up on this so late and you get too much time to prep. But I'm not a big fan of, I'm a big fan of Zygarde. It has a lot of options, but really the rest of the team outside of Zygarde is falling apart. Scizor, because of Cinderace's issue with removal, is going to be forced into a defensive role, which means, hey, I'm not needing to worry about. Which means you're not going to, oops, I paused, something happened. I'm not going to be dealing with, Bandit or Swords Dance as much as I will have to do with removal, because your team is so weak to hazard stacking, and your team's going to be switching around a lot because you have so much momentum and flip turn and all of that your team's going to be moving around a lot, which means you're running a lot of heavy duty boots or you're running defensive Scizor. That's just how it's going to be, and that's why forcing rolls is a big deal. Celebi is also going to be playing a more defensive role, I feel like, with this team's competition defensively, since Araquanid doesn't have its own recovery, Aggron doesn't have its own recovery, and it's just bad. Scizor does have its own recovery, but then your defensive core, 1, 2, 3, all weak to fire. Araquanid is the only thing not weak to fire, and if you're switching in 100% Araquanid to not lose your Scizor, which is your only defogger and maybe your only priority, you can see how that can be an issue with doubles and predictions and coverage, right? It's a massive problem. Rotom Heat tears through this team. It completely demolishes this team, for example. But yeah, your hazard setters, you have, I think we talked about this already. You have Celebi, you have Aggron, you have Araquanid. Webs can be good for this team, actually, right? It can be really good for this team. But again, if you're going to be core changing, you can't bring webs, because then it means you're putting webs on your own side, and that'll limit Dragon Dance, Zygarde, or anything, or Toxicroak from setting up and sweeping. So yeah, that's that. I'm going to put your team... comparative to how Kate's team will do against the majority of teams, I think your team is technically better. I just really don't like your team, because at least Kate's team is built as a stall team. It's built well. It's just missing that offensive presence, which can be easily changed. Your team can't be easily changed as much. I'm gonna put, this is a really tough ranking, but I definitely think it's not as good as Keenan's team. I'm gonna share this spot because I really can't decide, but I do not like either of your teams, to be honest with you. And last but not least, at least for this episode, for part 1, is going to be Helix and the Wakanda Warriors. Helix has been single-handedly, hands down, one of the best draftees ever. That dude read the rules and everything. He's the man. So originally he had like this weird rain team that was, I thought it was pretty okay at least, but he reworked it right now, and I'm taking a look at it for the first time. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so this is a good team, or it's for at least working with the scraps like you did. It's a good team. Only issue is your team is a little slow. Greninja capping the speed at, I believe, like 124. Greninja 122, close but not no cigar. Greninja capping speed at 122 without Protean or Battle Bond is a little frustrating. Greninja's having an issue with the electric and fighting type moves. Your electric is covered by Piloswine, but it loses to fighting, and your fighting is covered by Clefairy, but a lot of times that can't take as many hits. without healing up as often. Your team is really knockoff weak, especially defensively. You're leaning on a double of Violet Core, which is never really a great option. Appleton is pretty good to deal with those fires and fighting types at the same time. However, that also doesn't really love losing its item, but it can manage. I don't see Masquerade coming too often, especially if paired with Greninja. I see Clefairy and Pilo coming often, maybe not together, but I see them coming often, which isn't always great. Removal wise, you have 1, 2, 3. You have 3 forms of removal and 1 Espeon. That's not horrible, it's actually pretty okay. But a lot of times you're not bringing Espeon. Your next best removal is going to be Rotom-Pete. If it's Rotom-Pete, you're running heavy duty boots. That's just how it's going to be most of the time. So it's predictable. You're not specs, you're not set up. You could be set up, but you're not leftovers. You're not scarfed. You're not trick. That's the big one. You're not trick if you're heavy duty boots. Scissor has a little bit more room to play around with an offensive role with knockoff and Swords Dance, but I can see it also being more played with a defensive role with setup like it does in like Natex and OU, where it's primarily invested in special defense or physical defense, and then it's just Swords Dance and Quick Button. Gengar is a good speed tier. I really like your speed tiers outside of the Greninja. I believe Staraptor is base 100 or something like that. Gengar is base 110. So you're going by increments of 10, which is great. Komala is a great Slept-on-Mon. Rock Setters, Clefairy, Piloswine, yep. Both your Rockers are Violet Mons, predictable. That means you're bringing a defensive core, you're bringing in a Violet Mon, which means you're weak to knock off. Not great. Staraptor's awesome, but if you're running Bandit and stuff, you're also pretty weak to, at least with Rotom-Pete and Staraptor, which is going to be a good offensive core with good pivoting. You're kind of weak to rocks, which means hey, you can run boots, which is cool. Scissor's a really good mon. Scissor alone can do a lot. Paired with Greninja, I really like, actually. I don't think it's too bad. But I do not like that you're leaning on Piloswine and Clefairy as much as you are. I don't feel like that's a healthy situation, since Rotom-Pete's only recovery is going to be Pain Split. It's harder to lean on that for sure. Yeah, it's a little hard to lean on those. Yeah. Sorry, I'm thinking a lot about this one. I just haven't seen this team before now. Your pivoting is pretty alright. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 forms of pivoting. I'm pretty sure Masquerain gets U-turn. If it's not, then you only have 4. Masquerain, U-turn. Yep, it's U-turn. Masquerain is something I can see coming, actually, with Quiver Dance. Since it has Quiver Dance, it's really good. Its base special attack is 100 too, which is not horrible, but as a late game sweeper, it's pretty good. It can play a similar role as Volcarona and the fire one, or the ice one, I was thinking, what's his name? Whatever, the ice Frostmoth. Big Snom. But yeah, I really don't like this defensive core. Other than that, your speed tier is good, your pivots are good. I'm just not the biggest fan of this special defensive core. What you're doing right is you have good speed tiers. You have good momentum, you have good pivoting, your hazard control is alright. But yeah, defensively it's suffering, and you don't have enough offensive momentum or offensive presence, immediate at least, and we don't have the setup and stuff for me to justify calling it offense. It looks more like a balanced team with lackluster balls. So actually, yeah, you do have 5 forms. I'm gonna put this above. I'm gonna put this right here underneath. That's another hard one. I'm gonna put this underneath Keenan's team, because if Keenan doesn't bring the Vanillux and stuff, his defensive capabilities are much better than yours. Yeah, and he already has the offensive presence that you have with Victini, Bisharp, Alolan or Steve Bisharp, Latias, and even these two down here. That is what I'm gonna do. So I think for the top 8, these are the rankings. I have Mexican Mew Mewtwo's on top. which is Fat Rat as of the end of day 1, or at least video 1. Then I have, please don't tell me your name, Uprog second. I have Yook next, then Ryan, then Keenan, then Helix, and then tied is Noct and Kate. So that is going to do it for the first video for PRs. This is the 6. Whoops, these are the 6 as of right now. Goodbye, God bless, and have a great day.